Welcome to the Technical Working Group Subcommittee of October 1st, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and let's begin with roll call and confirm that we have a quorum present to proceed with tonight's agenda. Diane, please proceed with roll call.
Thank you. Town of Woodside? City of Millbrae?
Present.
City of Redwood City? Absent. City of Brisbane? Sorry.
Terry O'Connell.
Town of
present.
Hillsborough?
Christine Krolik, present.
Thank you, Chair. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. This is the time for public comment for members or the public to address the subcommittee on matters not listed on tonight's agenda. Please remember that each speaker is limited to 2 minutes, and the subcommittee cannot take action on items raised during public comment. Diane, do we have any members of the public who would like to make a comment on non-agenda items?
We have one member on Zoom with their hands raised, Miss Ann Schneider.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Miss Schneider, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for having the working group meeting tonight. I was questioning when the next ground-based noise meeting will be and if there will be any action today for that triggered reverse flows here at SFO, but that took away countless people, countless hours of sleep. So an update on a way that the airport has to alert us when there really are these non-emergency uses of reverse flow and flying basically just a few hundred feet over people, schools, and our homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. Do we have any other members of the public?
Thank you. That there are no other hands raised on Zoom or in the room.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to my report. Tonight's technical working group meeting will focus on exploring the parameters for a study. The roundtable will be advancing on innovative noise mitigation strategies and emerging air mobility technologies. This discussion provides an important opportunity for us to better understand the tools, trends, and guiding principles that can help shape how we approach new and evolving technologies that may influence aircraft noise and community impacts in the years ahead. We'll walk through each slide together, gathering input on key questions and identify any additional areas of priorities members feel should be reflected in the study. The feedback we collect this evening will help staff and consultants develop a refined draft framework to bring back to the technical working group before advancing recommendations to the full roundtable. With that, we'll now go into our discussion. Vanessa, I believe you have a presentation for us to walk through.
Yes, we're going to get the presentation up. So there's a little feedback. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this evening, we're going to be reviewing proposed parameters for a study that's going to focus on innovative noise mitigation and emerging air mobility technology. So this has been really a hot topic for the roundtable, and so we're going to do a deep dive into that. So the intent is to begin shaping a framework for how the roundtable can evaluate new tools, new trends, new concepts that might influence aircraft noise and community impacts in the future years. So we really want to be proactive and kind of get ahead of some of these new technologies that are emerging. So I just want to note that, you know, this is the working group, and this discussion is really meant to get input. We're not finalizing a scope. We are just having a really robust discussion so that we can ensure that the study reflects what the roundtable values and what we want to prioritize as we move forward with the study. So next slide. Okay, so in this discussion, we are going to start by discussing the parameters of the study, which is basically what we hope to learn and why. Then we'll review the potential purpose and outcomes and discuss that, and then we're going to explore areas of research to be covered and walk through a potential draft evaluation framework and guiding principles. So as we move through each section, I'll stop with some discussion prompts and open it up for the TWG members to discuss. So we're going to go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so, and hopefully all the members, this presentation was attached to the packet, so hopefully you can all see it, because I know the screens are pretty small. So this slide, basically, we took a stab at the study purpose and the goals. So the purpose of the study that we're going to have we're going to work with HMMH on is to do a broad survey of what's in development right now, which we're considering the pipeline. So not just what's already on the market, but what's being considered to go to the market. So that the roundtable is educated and informed on current and future noise mitigation technologies, as well as advanced air mobility, AAM technologies. So we really want to be able to develop a policy toolkit that the jurisdictions can use when it's time to regulate and possibly advocate for these developments in their local jurisdictions. We'd also like to get information on the key players and the timelines for possible deployment. And this really relates to specifically to air taxis and drones. So this was a conversation that we've had at the roundtable already, where I think some of you have been on panels where you've heard kind of some of the development of those, and we just want to be well-informed and proactive with that. And lastly, the outcome of the study is we would hope to be able to make recommendations to the roundtable for advocacy and legislative engagement once that time comes. So we really want to be proactive and equipped with as much knowledge as possible as things are developing. And I'm going to stop right here just so we can open it up and see if there's, so the prompt I have are there any other objectives or outcomes that the study should address? And so some that I thought that I wanted to just throw out there, like an example is, should the study include goals around regional coordination? Is there a level of community engagement that we want to make sure we include in the study, or we want to have it as a guideline to weigh? So I'm going to stop there and open it up for the members to discuss.
Well, I'm not quite sure how we would go about. I think that engaging the communities and getting their input, because it's so advanced of what's going to be on the table, and we don't quite know what's going to be on the table yet. And I think for my community, my worry and my fear is that with the drones, we're going to have a lot more local traffic coming through our communities.
Olympics are planning to use air taxis in LA. So maybe we could take a look at what their plan is and what their guidelines are, and how they're working with the FAA on that. And then also, Amazon, I guess, already has a drone program. So I think that's another thing we can look at. How is Amazon interacting with the FAA? You know, what's the role there? And I just wonder, are there any other jurisdictions who've maybe done a study, like the National League of Cities or the National Council of Mayors, or just are there any other studies out there?
Just going to piggyback off of both comments. Is this my thought? There we go. Just going to piggyback off both comments from Terry and from Christine. And I think right now where we stand as a group is there's not a whole lot of expertise on the subject of advanced air mobility. And I think we really need to get our arms around the technology because it's emerging. And I know in discussions that I've had, they're probably about 5 years away from FAA clearance for airports. But that's not stopping these people from trying to find public-private relationships. So understanding the impact of noise, the different routes these things may be flying overhead. To your point, you know, doing this equitably, so not one particular neighborhood or one particular community is impacted by this. So I think we need to get information.
Yeah, I think, there we go. I think we need, so I come at this from a slightly different perspective. One, I'd like to know what is our area of responsibility? So what can we do? Because we've been so limited in what we can impose on SFO, which is nothing, because that's FAA's domain. So I think the first thing sorry to use this as a metaphor, I'm taking the 50,000 foot, I made Gene smile. The 50,000 foot view here. One, what is our role? What does the FAA allow us to do? Probably very little, but so are we recommending things? And then drill right down into what communities can do. So we've already heard, there have been several comments at our meetings about zoning, that we have to sort of eliminate the ability of people to just set up bases in our neighborhoods, which I think they can do now if they want to. So I think, I'm trying to take it from the biggest global issue, that is what can we do from an FAA perspective, right down to what an individual community can do. So I think understanding that will help us scope out what the goals really are, because I think we're somewhat limited by what we could do. So I know that we're trying to take it from the perspective of how are we going to mitigate noise from drones and air taxis, and how are we going to, I don't know, can we do any of those things? So I'd like to find that out first from an FAA perspective, what we're able to do.
That brings up a great point. Yeah, no, it does, definitely. In one of the past meetings that I attended over at San Mateo Police Department, they have drone technology that they're actively using throughout the county. And one of the things that we experience out here in Millbrae, where we're at tonight, is that we're so close to the airport that these drones from San Mateo Police Department, if I recall right, can't be within a certain amount of area from the airport due to that traffic. So needing to understand what those limitations are with the technology, so that way we can understand, how an area like this, per se, or possibly San Bruno or other neighboring cities around us would expect from this technology, how close it could get to the airport.
The airlines, and they wanted to make it seamless where a high-end customer could go from their local outlying airport to San Francisco Airport to get on another flight. And that's one of their first thoughts for revenue streams. Sports teams were another one of their first thought. And then high-end, and I'll say tech-related high-end CEO transport between one area to another for meetings. So that was three of their key focus on how they were going to break into the market. Once they broke into the market, they thought that they would be able to bring in other components of how they'd make this into a viable service and ultimately make money. So I think we're looking at different things. I think would be good to know what this group, if we're only concerned with traffic going in and out of the airport, that's going to be a really different study than if we're looking at what Amazon facilities might be doing and for their customer base, and once it's from the airport to their facility or at their airport facility. So knowing what we're trying to suss out could be very different if we have a role that we can or can't play under the auspice of this group. And I think that while part of this group is funded by money from SFO, and so we definitely have a link to airport operations, whether it's SFO or other airports. I don't know how much of a link we would have to private facility to private facility, but I think that's part of what we really need to let our members know, how the private facility to private facility air mobility is going to look like, and whether that's from a people hub or a freight is going to make a big difference on what it's going to look like and how heavy those vehicles have to be.
So Jerry, are you saying, like, if Google's flying executives around from facility to facility, or Apple or Facebook, or.
And they may not even go to SFO.
So that's not even, so is that part of our scope, or is that beyond our scope? If Google has an airport, they have their own,
Helioport or whatever.
well, they have that airport down that they use for private jets and stuff. And if they go to SFO and taking people on air taxis to SFO, that's probably within the domain, but if they're taking them to some facility in San Jose, maybe it's not. I think.
Yeah, no,
is that-
I
that's
think
the
it's
point?
all stuff we just need to suss out as far as, and I don't know if we have an answer on what we can do in this group, if we have to focus just on to or from SFO's airport facility, if that's our only concern. And if so, I think that really limits what we get to look at. So I'm not sure how we would find that answer out particularly.
I think we have one other area to explore too in regards to that, because one of the other use cases that was mentioned at that same meeting that we both attended was the possible use for advanced air mobility for lifting people to hospitals in case of emergency. And being that we have a regional hospital right here in Mills Peninsula that's not too far from the airport, you know, how's that noise going to impact the community? How's the flight path going to impact SFO? So understanding those questions would probably be key.
Well, you know, I think that when we were discussing, you know, life flight type of operations, I think all of our communities are going to be more, what's the word? Okay with hearing the noise. We're okay when we hear an ambulance coming through. We know there's a reason for that. It's not like, oh, somebody's getting their package, or some rich guy's coming home. You know, so I think that when we hear those disturbances from a medical use, it's a little bit different than hearing the disturbance from other kinds of uses, because we're accustomed to lights and sirens and, you know, that being necessary. And I think that that's one of the selling points that these advanced mobility providers are going to be using is, oh, it's for emergencies, it's for special things. And as it becomes more, just like the telephone was, you know, for an emergency, not
Right.
for everyday chit chat.
So it'll be interesting to find out how noisy these things are. They may be quite silent, but then we have another consideration: how safe are they? Because if there's a crash or an accident, that's noisy, and it affects the safety of the people on the ground. I would guess that a very popular use for this would be for our friends who live in Marin, because they don't live close to any airport, and it's a big deal if you live in Marin to try and get to SFO or Oakland. So I would think one of the things our municipalities are going to be faced with is if SFO is saying you can't land here, they're going to want to land somewhere near SFO. So they're going to be coming to all of us, and then, so I think that's what each of us are looking for, is what tools do we need, what arrows in our quiver? We say, okay, now we have the request. How do we handle this? And how do we handle it regionally instead of city by city, right?
Well, I think that if the FAA approves the drone flights and says they can fly to SFO, SFO can't say they can't come there. They have to let anybody land there that FAA says can land there. So they don't have any choice when it comes to saying no to someone wanting permission. It's in the general sense of things. I'm sure you just can't say I'm going to land.
So obviously we need more information. So that's what yeah.
Please, go ahead.
If I may, you are partially right. So the issue's going to become, does the SFO air traffic control tower want them on airport property? Answer is pretty much not right now. And so we're waiting to see what the outcome of that is. Somebody has said possibly over by Signature on the far side of the airfield. There's lots of studies being done. We've commissioned a few with Berkeley, the transportation, College of Transportation Studies. And so more to come on that. Hoping we can get Anwar from our departments kind of heading that stuff up to bring some information maybe in December.
And would that come to the technical working group, or do you think that would come to the full roundtable?
It's more fun to have it at the technical working group. You can go get in the weeds.
That's what we're here for, is to
I agree.
delve deep. So how do we resolve some of these questions before we even really look at the scope?
Yeah, so, Diane, can you go to the next slide? So the next slide really kind of focuses in on the areas of research, and it does cover a lot of the things that you guys talked about. What we want to do, hopefully do, is scan all the emerging technologies that's out there to compile a list. And then we want the list to be, to also include their readiness levels. So like, how close are they to being deployed? Is this something that's already, like a great example was the Olympics. If there's going to happen, it's, something in Olympics are in 2028, which is 2 years from now, approximately. And so we want to know the community impacts of that also. So we're also hoping that the research will assess the private land and airspace implications to better understand the benefits and risks of that. So, of course, there's going to be, like Christine was saying, if we have drones and they're silent, if there's no real noise impact, maybe, how are we weighing that versus if they are bringing a ton of money to communities? Like, which one are we more focused on? And so we also would like to have, to identify the key stakeholders. So this came up earlier too. So this includes all the companies, the agencies, the organizations, the government organizations, the roundtable, their role and what everyone is responsible for. And for the private companies, we really want to try to do a deep dive into it's going to be harder to get that information, but what they're working on and who they're working with. So the FAA is a great example of that, and just knowing what the role is, and like you said, if the FAA says something to SFO, what is SFO's responsibility, and then how does the roundtable play a role in that? And so it's a lot of information to try to ascertain. We want to take it step by step, so piece by piece. I think my idea with this study is that it will be a long-term document that will continue to research and evolve, but we really want that to kind of be the basis, the start of what we analyze first, so that we can continue to move forward from there. So there's areas on the screen, you see 3. They all have a list of potential outcomes that I tried to think about. So for the scan of the emerging technologies, we're hoping to get a list of current and pipeline noise mitigation technologies, the status and readiness of each, and then an analysis on potential community impacts for each technology or initiative. So then when we assess the private land and airspace implications, we're looking really there to see pros and cons for community, so good or bad for our local jurisdictions. And then, Paul, like you said, for identifying the key stakeholders, we're looking for just a profile of all of the companies, the organizations, the government roles. And for companies, we're looking for possible deployment timelines. So we can see this company is in the very beginning stages, or this company is, already has prototypes built and, are deploying on this date. And so that's kind of the start of the research that I was hoping to start with Jean, but I want to open it up to see if there's anything else that we want to add to that.
I think you're spot on with the start of this. One thing that stands out in my mind is as you're going through identifying who the key players are, I'd love to be present, just thinking myself, to see the technology firsthand. I know some of them, you're not going to be able to fly in the technology, but being able to get a presentation from those vendors and better understand what their business plans are and where they see these use cases developing as they go to market.
Okay. I think that what we heard when we were in that symposium was they really want to talk about what they're doing and how successful they are and where it can go and where it can lead. And now, of course, they're the cheerleaders. They just want to show the good and all the glitters. And they're probably in the back of their mind, they know about some of the downsides or the problems they're going to have moving forward. But that's not something they want to showcase, certainly to their investors or to people who are critical, as we should be, as we all should be, of their technology and what it's going to mean on the ground. I think that while we know that most electric cars and those kind of things are much quieter than a traditional combustion engine vehicle, I think that a lot of the drones, it's going to be the annoyance factor. It's like the mosquito in the room. It's not like it would keep you up at night because of its noise, but that sound will keep you up at night because it's not, it's a different kind of sound.
If it's constant.
Well, and if there's something zzz by, you're going to know it. And then there's also the feeling of privacy and invasion. It's like when a swarm of flies come through. They're not going to bite you necessarily. Our flies don't, but they're certainly annoying. And so I think a lot of what's going to be needing to be done on the small scale in towns, in our cities and our towns, in our jurisdictions, is going to be more based on the annoyance factor than on the actual volume of noise, because that's going to be very slight comparative to many other things.
Right, if it's once a day, it's one thing, but if it's once every couple of minutes, I mean, we don't know where it leads.
No, we don't know where it's going to go.
First, Vanessa, really great. I don't know who worked on this with you, you did, but it's, you really scoped it out pretty nicely here.
Thank you.
But I'm reminded of the phrase, what was that great line from Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat. This is such a global, it's almost like we're sitting here trying to figure out like the impact of AI on our society, the impact of these things on the Bay Area. It's just, it covers so much. You captured a lot of the categories, though, I think pretty well. I think, and I agree with you that this is a long-term project that's going to kind of bolt on as we move along. But I think staffing may be an issue here on capturing a lot of these things, because these little things like, let's figure out the companies and talk to them. That could be 20 people working 10 years to and not even get it done. I mean, I view it as, just identifying the people within some of these, within Amazon, within Alphabet, within Apple, within these, huge companies that we have out
Well,
here.
I think one of the good things of working through this group and having the resources we do within the airport is anyone that's going to be wanting to utilize the airport is going to want to be in touch with them. And so I think our first line of defense is going to be airport staff, as far as finding out what requests are coming both from private parties and from the FAA, or what he's hearing. He's going to hear if, say, an Amazon is wanting to do something that's going to be impactful, probably before we would, or certainly before we see those impacts. He's going to have a little more advance notice than we might. But also with MMH, we have really good information because they're nationwide, so you guys keep tabs on these kind of things and probably know way more than you're sharing with us at the moment, just because we haven't asked you.
Well, another thing to consider is the roundtable, while the partnership has been limited this year, we do have a partnership with the FAA. So these are the kind of conversations that is really good to have because we're able to make requests to them. So if there's someone who's in contact with the FAA and the roundtable makes a request, that's something that any information having to do with, the Northern California Bay Area and AAM, we'd like to see it or at least weigh in on it. That could be a request that the full roundtable makes. That could be a letter to the FAA. I don't know how far that would get. I'm just throwing it out there as a potential outcome. But that's something that I really think the study is a long haul. So we do have a 5-year strategic work plan that the roundtable needs to revamp next year, early next year. And so I'm definitely thinking that this is something that is kind of a prerequisite to that and will be included in that plan. Because as things are developed, it's just so much stuff. And I just remember when, when we had Lyft, Uber come in, and it was just, there was no way to gauge how enormous of a shift that would be for public transportation, and so, and we're still figuring that out now. There's still like legislation that's being passed. This is very similar to that. The goal is for the roundtable to be just proactive and be informed, because right now we're hearing things in bits and pieces, and we're reading articles, and we're seeing panels. The key players are kind of stepping up a little bit, but like Terry said, they're just showing the pros, the benefits, and it's, I believe, the roundtable's job to dig deep and find out how it's actually going to impact our communities on the ground. So I think this is a start. Where the hope, Diane, can you go to the next slide? So the hope and idea is that the roundtable can create a set of guiding principles. So this is basically mission and goal of the roundtable as it relates to how we're evaluating what comes out of this study. So this can include community noise impacts. We have safety and health, public health, environmental sustainability, equity and accessibility is something that we talked about also. So the principles are really designed to ensure that the study is balanced and that it aligns with the roundtable's mission. So Paul, this goes to your point of what can the roundtable do, and if there are things that come out of the study that are clearly identified as a roundtable role, then we want to prioritize those things first. And so the question here that I had, which I'm not sure if we can answer now, but just something to think about, is how should some of these principles be prioritized? So, and are there others that should be considered? So right now on the slide, you see noise impacts on communities, which is the roundtable's kind of #1 main priority. Then you have safety and public health, environmental sustainability, and equity and accessibility. So if there's any other principles that we need to be considering, and if there's any thought to what weighs a little heavier than the other.
I want to piggyback on what Paul said. Really, thank you. This is a really dense subject, and I thought the way that you distilled this down so that we're not really into it, it was great. I had a suggestion just to keep the health concerns front and center. Maybe just rephrasing a little bit, instead of noise impacts on communities, we say health concerns due to noise impacts, and then safety and public health could be other public health and safety concerns, and leave environmental sustainability and equity and accessibility, just to, if the group feels that that's a good idea.
I think that we almost dilute the two subheadings if we try to throw public health and noise.
What Terry's suggesting, to keep them both separate. And the only reason why I say that is when we look at these reports, meeting after meeting, when we are in our core group, we're always looking at the noise impacts, and that's a separate thing. So keeping that separate from safety and public health just seems to be the logical thing, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was just suggesting quality of life instead of annoyance.
Well, I just, annoyance doesn't have to be the word
I mean,
that goes there.
I think it's true. It's just, we are looking at the annoying factor, but can we make it,
Sound better.
give it better
I actually was
impact?
looking up synonyms for annoyance, and
Yeah.
annoyance actually captures it better than anything that I
Yeah.
saw. But I agree with Terry that there is a huge annoyance factor of, sitting in your backyard, and you hear this tiny little whining, buzzing.
Right.
Well, and you immediately, what is it?
Yes.
Is it,
And where is it? You can't
What
always
is it
see
and where is it? And, I mean, we have that just with airplane noises because of our shape of being a bowl. A plane may sound like it's coming from over there and it's coming from over there, but because of the ricochet, you're looking up, it's like, oh, it's there. And that's not even that it's traveled past you to there, it's just,
But I would like to capture the annoyance factor.
I think we
that's a
would, some
real
word we
public,
would want, and, noise, and maybe a better word than annoyance on communities, or noise and other impacts. We could leave it and, But I do think that these are good. I think that the number one should always be safety and public health. As far as the number one goal, just like the FAA is, I think that if we keep it consistent with what really is the most important is keeping people safe. Number two, back in the day. Unless back in the day, unless it was for some reason for work or you had to have it, and now the 5-year-olds have them.
The only thing I would add, Terry, on the equity and accessibility is the routes of these technologies where they're going to be going through. Because what I would hate to see is that one particular community, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4, I don't know, however many, would have to experience all these flights going over them within our larger region.
Well, I agree with that, but I think it might almost be reverse. If it is people moving, it's going to be reverse of what the normal poor communities, from our point of view, what we're looking at to mitigate impacts to our communities. I think that it wouldn't be where we need to look at how we're going to be how it's going to be equitable first. I mean, so I'm just saying how we go down this list of building a program or building a research or an analysis, that we looked at it that way.
I think it's a healthy start, what you're suggesting, and obviously, since this is a technology that's emerging and we don't have our arms around it quite yet, who knows if that order is going to change over time. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a good list, the way to.
That's a great list.
Okay. So, great.
And do we have a hand up on the screen? Is there somebody that wants to?
I'm not sure if Ann's hand was up from her last comment or if that's a new, oh, it's a new one. It is a new comment.
Does Ann want to make a comment on what we've talked about so far?
Chair, yes, she does.
Okay.
Ann Schneider, Millbrae. In stepping back a little bit and looking at this, originally I would have said, and staff mentioned cities' impact. My question would be which cities? Terry just talked about this, that it might be the people in Woodside and Portola that suddenly have a helipad next to them. I'm so sorry for them. As long as your SFO roundtable, whether it's, well, most likely it's going to be human beings being moved, but it could be goods being moved to SFO, in which case which cities are going to be most greatly impacted by this. Some of you mentioned equity, which means South City always gets some equity bonuses because it has a low-income neighborhood. But those of us who are the middle-of-the-road cities, the ones that aren't good enough to become part of a fire board, for example, we're the ones that are going to face the impact. So the which cities question should be front and center. The other thing, I would divide this between drones with goods and no people in it, and helicopters, whatever we're going to call them, with people in it and privacy. I will tell you, every day, the Coast Guard helicopter flies immediately over my house. Last week, it circled a couple of times. Now, that's emergency, so I tend to say, okay, but not every bloody person trying to get from wherever to get to the airport on that. And then there are existing models that you can look at the economics. Right now, Amazon Fulfillment Center is in South San Francisco City. I've sat at League of California Cities with their mayor when we were voting on a measure to try to get equitable distribution of sales tax to the point of sale, not the point of the fulfillment center. In that way, you're looking at the same model for this. Who's benefiting from this? If South City gets that helipad out by the coast, they're going to have a profit. But if they're flying over Millbrae, San Bruno, Hillsborough, and Burlingame, and we're paying the price, that isn't fair. So profit and financial equitability, and not doing what the airport has done, what high-speed rail has done, is continue to say Millbrae must suffer for the regional good. That has to stop. Thank you.
There are no other public comments.
Okay, great.
So just to kind of do now, and it sounds like what we're primarily, or initially thinking is the direction that the roundtable wants to go with the study. It's just kind of compartmentalizing every section of thing that might happen and putting a timeline to that. So that would be the next steps. And I think this group is going to be doing this conversation with the study and then reporting out to the full roundtable. There might be some times where there are recommendations that we'd like the TWG to make to the full roundtable so that the full group can say, yes, this is what we want to do. Or
And right now, we have enough in our budget, I believe, to do this study. So that's something that's already been allocated for additional technical work.
yeah, so I'm going to say yes. I'm looking at Jean. Jean's like, sure. I'm going to say yes for December meeting for just at least a scope of work. And we can work offline if we need to have a TWG meeting again before the December meeting, so you all can see that. And then if that's something that we want to share with the full roundtable. HMMH contract, we just extended, so we do have the technical services through next year, and that does include a technical study. In the past, that was I believe that was ground-based noise, which has wrapped up, and so now we do have budget to work with Jean on the study, so yeah.
And just to let people who weren't aware, at our last ground-based noise meeting, we did talk about merging the work of ground-based noise into the technical working group. And right at this point, we haven't set the agenda for our next technical working group, so I'm not sure what's going to be on there, but that is something where we're going to not be having ground-based noise meetings. We are going to be working them in where, when we talk about all those things, we can have it as a more informal discussion and do it as a working group rather than a formal agenda item where people only will have 2 minutes to speak. And that way we can continue in the technical working group to get more information out and to delve into deeper topics as we need to. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that.
Okay. So that's the only item that I have tonight for TWG. I'm going to pass it over to the chair to close out the meeting.
Okay, thank you. It was a great presentation, and I think it's going to give us a lot to work on going forward. So now we do have the opportunity for anybody at the subcommittee level to share any relevant updates or information from their jurisdictions to the communities. Anybody have anything?
Just quick comment. Thank everyone from staff for the great presentation and kind of guidance on how to direct us. I think it was a healthy conversation.
And one thing I'm going to mention is that I did talk to our city manager and planning department, and in Brisbane we have that heliports or any landing of any kind of flying objects is restricted. It has to be given special permission. So our ordinances already had a safety net built in so that there's not the possibility of someone coming in unannounced and building some kind of structure or some sort of business to facilitate that with at least out getting approval first. So I think that's a good thing to look into for all our members, to make sure how their land ordinances are and their planning, make sure their planning laws are in order to make that a not by right.
Yeah, well, that would be a good
Kind
thing
of
to add to our
designation.
recommendations.
Yeah. So,
And then,
go ahead.
So our next meeting of the technical working group would be Wednesday, December 3rd, here at 5:45 PM.
I think that'd work, yeah. Great, thank you, and thanks for all the work, and we are adjourned, and we'll take a break before the next meeting starts. Thank you.
Thank you. Time is 6:53.